Hey, welcome to the Everyday Immunity Podcast, a place where we talk about different ways to boost the immune system naturally each and every day. I'm your host, Alicia Rosati of Rosati Nutrition. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. Today I am so excited to be talking to you about intermittent fasting, all the science behind it, what some experts say, and what I believe on it. But before I get into all of that, how are you guys doing? Because I am so over quarantine. Like I can't wait to step foot in a mall just because, or go out to a restaurant just because. Like I'm so over it. I know a lot of restrictions have been lifted for certain states and some parts of Canada. I know even here in Ontario, a lot of places are opening up and it's going to be back to business as usual, I think Friday when I'm recording this. So things would have already been gone back to normal when this is up and when you're listening to this. But here in the GTA, we still have full restrictions and businesses are not open as usual, and I'm so over it. But I kind of understand it because most of the cases are here in the GTA, so better safe than sorry. But I'm just so tired of being stuck at home and knowing that I can't go out anywhere. Knowing that I can't go sit at the library to get work done. Knowing that I can't go to a coffee shop just for a change of scenery. And I'm really tired of it. So, I don't know, reach out to me. Let me know if you guys are feeling the same because I can't be the only one who's absolutely sick and tired of this. I can't. But back to today's topic of intermittent fasting. What even is it? So many people don't know what it is. And I feel like, honestly, I heard of it, but I never really got onto the bandwagon until recently. Actually, I think a few months ago. I really started hopping on the IF bandwagon, but with good reason. But it shocks me. Some people still don't know what the heck it is. But fear not, I am here to explain it all. Not that I'm some medical expert or anything, or dieting expert, because I'm not. But just to, I don't know, I guess kind of clear the air for you guys and let you guys know some of the science that I researched and found on intermittent fasting. Okay, so what the heck is intermittent fasting? Intermittent fasting is fasting intermittently. But for real, it's when you go periods without eating, and not in a, in a depressive mental state, choosing not to eat kind of way, but in a way where you achieve health benefits and you achieve, whether it's health or religious reasons, a lot of people fast for Ramadan, which is great because along with, fulfilling your religious needs or beliefs, I guess, you are also achieving some health benefits in the meantime, which is awesome. So there are actually two major classes, I guess, or two major ways to classify different kinds of intermittent fasting, because it's not like a one size fits all, one proper way to do it. There are so many different ways to fast intermittently. So you have your two main categories. One is daily time restricted feeding, and one is it's kind of called the 5-2 intermittent fasting way of eating or diet, whatever you want to call it, which basically means you eat normally for 5 days, and for 2 days you severely restrict your calorie intake to less than 70% of what you would normally consume in a regular day. And that's a really key thing here. There isn't one formula that says only eat X amount of calories. It's all dependent on you individually. So if I were to follow the 5-2 intermittent fasting method, what I eat on my fasting day would look completely different than what you would eat on your fasting day. It goes along with your basal metabolic rate, how much you're normally eating every day, your body weight, your body fat percentage, how physically active you are. All that kind of stuff comes into play for your everyday caloric intake. Now you would just consume 70% or less of that on those 2 fasting days. The time restricting feeding is what's most common that most people do, that I do. It's kind of the least intensive way of intermittently fasting, but you're still getting a ton of health benefits, and it's not as extreme as the 5-2. Eventually, I would like to get up to the 5-2 method, but for now, I'm happy with the time restricted one. The most common times for time restriction, you would look at it as kind of like your day to day. So there's 24 hours in a day, and you just restrict your feeding window for the whole day. So the most common one is a 16-8 split. So you would fast for 16 hours each day and eat within an 8-hour window. It sounds extreme. I know. When I first heard of this, I was like, no. And then I tried to do it. I didn't just cold turkey do it. I built my way up to it. I started with a 12-hour fast for about a week, and then I pushed it up to like 13, 14 hours. And for me, it was hard because I'm such a breakfast person. I used to be a person that was like, as soon as I wake up, I need food in my body. But that was also my adrenal fatigue talking. And now I feel like things are a little bit more regulated. But yeah, so I can go like 16, 17, 18 hours without eating in a day now, and I feel great. No BS. I actually feel great. I love it. I don't think I could, even if I wanted to, I don't think I could eat normally anymore, just because I feel so like heavy at night, and it's just so natural for me to have my dinner, be full, and then the next morning not eat until about like 11 o'clock. But I'm going to talk a little bit later about my personal fasting regimen, how long I've been doing it, and my specific hours and whatnot. Now, a really big topic is, or a really big question, I should say, is intermittent fasting a new fad diet? Because I don't know about you, but I really hadn't heard of intermittent fasting too much until recently, maybe like the last year, couple years or so. And I thought it was crazy at first. And I was like, oh, here we go, another fad diet. But no, it's not. It's actually been around since 5th century BCE, in the time of Hippocrates. And if you guys know who Hippocrates is, I love the dude. He is the so-called father of Western medicine. And he is the one who said the famous quote, "Let thy food be thy medicine and thy medicine be thy food," which basically says like, eat your way healthy, pretty much. Don't take medicines and pharmaceuticals unless absolutely necessary, but the bulk of your medicine and nutrition and health should come from the foods you're eating. And now this is the father of Western medicine saying this, and look at Western medicine today. Mic drop. Like, we don't follow his teachings whatsoever nowadays, and it's really, really sad. I feel like we have lost touch with eating and the point of eating and like the purpose of food, and that food is not strictly for pleasure and to make us feel good and to make us feel happy and whatnot. Like, food is literally meant to nourish us. That's the role of food. We need food to survive, plain and simple. But here in the Western world, we've just glamorized food and fats and, savory foods, and we've just shied away from that message quite a bit. Just like I am shying away from today's topic, which I always end up doing. It's so terrible. I don't know if you guys have that friend who tries to tell one story and then you get so caught up in a second story and then another spin-off story, and then you totally lose track of the original story that you were trying to tell. That's me. I am that friend. Just disclaimer. But for real, getting back on topic here. As I mentioned, it has been around since the 5th century, and Hippocrates theorized intermittent fasting for ill patients. So if you were dealing with a certain illness, condition, disease, whatever it may be, he thought that like intermittently fasting, I guess not eating, would give your body the time that it needs to repair itself and heal itself. And a lot of cultures and other alternative medicine practitioners have used this for quite some time. It's not a new thing. I guess it just gained popularity here in North America recently. I guess as like a fad diet sort of thing, but it really isn't. It really has had concrete medical uses since the 5th century. So I guess it kind of has some backing to it. I don't know. We'll see. Now, I just want to let you guys know I am going to be throwing a lot of studies and articles and reviews out at you in this podcast, and I'm going to kind of summarize them for you and things that I found. But if you do want to read the full reports, they will be on my website. If you just click the podcast tab on my website, you can find any episode. They're all available on my website with some show notes and with like links to articles or anything supporting my message or things that I talk about in these podcasts. But the first article I want to discuss with you guys is called Metabolic Effects of Intermittent Fasting, Annual Review of Nutrition. And it was written by Ruth Patterson. So basically, this study is saying that it's supporting the time restriction method of intermittent fasting. And it's just talking about the benefits of eating at specific times during the day. We all know that all living beings, well, most living beings have a circadian clock, your circadian rhythm. So typically humans, wake up with the sun and fall asleep when the sun goes down. That's the way our ancestors always lived in ancient times. And that's the way we should be living still today. Just the same way as most animals are nocturnal, like you think of a skunk or a raccoon, they come out at night. That's their circadian rhythm. Our circadian rhythm is up when sun is up and bed when sun goes down. So naturally, if you think about it, our body is working on that same clock. We should be eating in the morning when, we're waking up and we're getting ready for the day. And it would make sense that as our day goes on, it makes sense, that things are starting to decline. So for example, your circadian rhythm has an impact on your metabolism throughout the day. So your metabolism is running highest in the morning and it slows down. And by the time you go to bed, which is at nighttime, your metabolism has wound down to nothing almost. And same thing is true for insulin sensitivity, You are very sensitive to insulin first thing in the morning, which is why it's a good idea to have your carb heavy and, like your fruit first thing in the morning, because your body knows exactly what to do with it. It's very sensitive to insulin, so it can use that glucose, all of that. And as the day goes on, that sensitivity starts to decline. So your cells aren't as readily available to use that glucose and take it out of your bloodstream. And you are less likely when your insulin sensitivity is high, because your body is actively using those sugars, it's less likely for you to hang on to that as fat. Whereas when insulin sensitivity decreases, and insulin resistance increases, that's what we see when people hang on to a lot of fat, develop things like fatty liver or type 2 diabetes. Those are all because of insulin resistance. Your body does not know what to do with it. And instead of your cells using that glucose as fuel, they are hanging onto it and storing it as fat. I'm sure you guys have heard of that myth, like don't eat after 5 p.m., don't eat after 7 p.m., it's bad for you. And honestly, there is a little bit of weight to it, just because your body is starting to slow down closer to the end of the day. So if you eat more in tune with your circadian rhythm, chances are you are not going to hold on to fat as much. And your metabolism is up and you will probably lose weight. I'm not saying this is guaranteed 100%. I'm basing this off of these reviews and articles and the science behind it. And that's what this article is saying. So just to hammer in that point, the actual review says that meals consumed at night are associated with greater postprandial glucose and insulin exposure than content-matched meals during the day, leading to increased HbA1c levels and risk of type 2 diabetes over time. Basically what that's saying is when you eat late at night, just like I was saying, your insulin sensitivity, insulin resistance changes at night, and you're more likely to hold on to that as fat. As insulin resistance increases over time and becomes more common, you're more prone to type 2 diabetes. It also says that metabolic responses to a glucose load are slower in the evening than in the morning. So like I said, if you want to eat a glucose-rich meal, like lots of carbs kind of thing, fruits, it's best to eat those in the morning. Now, some could argue, that if you just train yourself to be a night owl, that's your new circadian clock. Actually, no. This annual review is saying that desynchronization of that master clock in your brain and your circadian clock in your liver, your fat, and your skeletal muscle cells actually increase risk of chronic disease. I'm not willing to take that risk. I don't know. I think I would. I guess it's because of me, because I just naturally am a morning person, but I don't want to take that risk. I don't like staying up at night, not for me. And I was reading somewhere that it said, like shift work actually does increase your risk of developing these diseases because, if you have to take on the night shift, I get it. You have to do that. You can't really get out of that. That's your job. But it can over time lead to increased risk of, like stroke and heart disease and diabetes. And they prove that in an article, which I think is insane. But hopefully, if those individuals who have to work a night job at least know the risk and know that what the science says, maybe they can do other activities to help combat that risk, and just lower their overall chances of having to deal with a disease later on in life. And maybe one of those activities or, factors or lifestyle changes that they can implement to, like reduce or combat that increased risk is intermittent fasting. And I'm not talking about, like time restricted intermittent fasting. I'm just talking about intermittent fasting in general, whether it's a 5-2 split, whatever it may be. Now, it's also important to know that a lot of these studies have been done on rodents, and they do it on rats because their metabolism, I guess, is really closely similar to ours. But there are more studies on like a 5-2 split way of intermittent fasting versus a time-restricted intermittent fasting method. And I don't know why that is. That's just the way it is. But I think it's important to discuss all the science. So this article from 2014 called Fasting Molecular Mechanisms and Clinical Applications by Longo and Matson says, and I'm going to read this quote from the actual study. In rodents, intermittent or periodic fasting protects against diabetes, cancers, heart disease, and neurodegeneration, while in humans, it helps reduce obesity, hypertension, asthma, and rheumatoid arthritis. Thus, fasting has the potential to delay aging and help prevent and treat diseases while minimizing the side effects caused by chronic dietary interventions. So this sounds pretty promising, if I do say so myself. I mean, in humans, it's been shown to help reduce obesity, hypertension, asthma, and rheumatoid arthritis. All things we do not want to be dealing with. And in rats, it's been shown to help with diabetes, cancers, heart disease, and neurodegeneration. Again, if that is happening in a rat, they use the rat model because it's very similar to the human model. So it is quite promising. The science is not saying 100% it will help with that, and it's important to know that reading these studies, when something is shown to help reduce risk or shown to fight or shown to treat whatever it may be, it's never 100%. There's always going to be some person who is following intermittent fasting and still has hypertension, or, has been intermittently fasting for years and still has asthma. So it's never a guaranteed 100% thing, and I just want people to be aware of that. Overall, though, I still think this is a pretty important study to look back on. It was written in 2014, so still relatively recent. I still think that this is a great study. There's another article that I was reading in Science Daily, which if you guys ever want to read science articles that are pretty factual, look up Science Daily because they're written by people and like the science is coming from people who actually have like really good degrees and have done proper research and all of that. And it usually has like a lot of links where they got this information from. So it's pretty science backed. But I was reading this article called Intermittent Fasting, Live Fast, Live Longer, ? And it was written December 2019, so very recently. And it was in relation to some things that Mark Mattson has said, and remember, he is one of the authors from that study I was just talking about. Now, he is a Johns Hopkins medicine neuroscientist with a PhD, and he's actually been studying intermittent fasting for the last 25 years and has adopted it himself about 20 years ago. And he has said that intermittent fasting could be part of a healthy lifestyle. So here you have this guy who's a neuroscientist, PhD. He's written a ton of papers. He's at Johns Hopkins. So right there, you're pretty credible. And he's been researching this for 25 years and implemented it himself for the last 20. I think that's pretty promising. And if this dude is doing it, I think I'm going to do the same thing. So this article is saying that, and I'm going to read the quote here again, an array of animal and some human studies have shown that alternating between times of fasting and eating supports cellular health, probably by triggering an age-old adaptation to periods of food scarcity called metabolic switching. So again, this goes back to a period of our ancestors. Sometimes they didn't get food. There was food scarcity because they didn't have grocery stores back then, back when it was like hunter-gatherer kind of thing. If you didn't hunt, if you didn't find an animal, I guess you're not eating protein. If you couldn't forage the right things, I guess you're not eating, right? So these scientists are thinking that we have this adaptation from those periods, and it's called metabolic switching. Now, Mark Mattson, the neuroscientist that we're talking about, has said that this switch improves blood sugar regulation, increases resistance to stress, and suppresses inflammation. Because most Americans eat 3 meals plus snacks each day, they do not experience the switch or the suggested benefits, which is so true. I don't know if you guys remember, but a few years ago, there was this whole metabolic thing of, how to switch on your metabolism by eating 6 snacks a day, no big meals and whatnot. And I used to do that. I used to eat literally like all day, every day, and it was supposed to help me lose weight, and it didn't. It was supposed to give me more energy, and I guess it did, but also felt sluggish because now my body has to work all day to break down all this food that I'm eating. Granted, they're smaller meals, but still. And I don't have any in-between time to, really like heal my body. So that could have been a really big issue that we as society kind of fell into with this whole fad diet way of eating. Now, that's not to say that if you do eat like 6 smaller meals a day that you're totally unhealthy and you're living wrong. I'm not saying that, but just know that if you are eating throughout the day, you're probably not experiencing this metabolic switch. And we all know that inflammation is one of the leading causes of disease and conditions known to our society right now. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but it seems almost like everybody has an autoimmune disorder nowadays. Autoimmune disorders are becoming one of the most common things that people are dealing with. And what leads to an autoimmune disorder? Inflammation. Inflammation is something that you do not want to have for a prolonged period of time. So if there are ways that we can reduce inflammation, I highly suggest you jump on that. Now, getting to some other benefits of intermittent fasting, a lot of people do it for the weight loss benefits. A lot of people don't care about the inflammation and reduced risk of this and that, even though I think you should. But a lot of people are focused on the weight loss, which I totally understand. Now, this article also says that there were 2 studies done at the University Hospital of South Manchester NHS Foundation Trust, and there was over 100 overweight women who were doing the 5-2 method. And they lost the same amount of weight as women who restricted their calories every single day. So the old way of thinking, of losing weight was you have to seriously restrict your calories, eat below your whatever, and you will lose weight. Well, that sucks. And that's really hard to do. Like if you're eating, let's say like 2,000 calories a day, and now someone's telling you to eat like 500 calories less, like that's hard to do. That sucks. But if you can get the same benefits by doing a 5-2 split, maybe that might be easier. Maybe that might be better. You're eating like normal for 5 days, hopefully still eating healthy, and 2 days you just seriously restrict your intake. That may be easier for some people, that may be harder for some people. Who knows? Everybody is different. But the results did show that while both groups of women who did the 5-2 split or the everyday calorie restriction, while they both did lose weight, the group doing the 5-2 split actually had better measures of insulin sensitivity and reduced belly fat than those with the calorie restriction group. So technically the 5-2 split actually did better than the everyday calorie restriction. Just something to think about. He also goes on to say in this article that preliminary studies suggest that intermittent fasting could be good for your brain as well. And there was a clinical trial done at the University of Toronto in April of 2019 that found that 220 healthy, non-obese adults who maintained a calorie-restricted diet for 2 years showed signs of improved memory in a bunch of cognitive tests. So this may show promising, but again, this was a clinical study. It's very, very early on in the studying game for this. So it's not to take any of that concrete, but they are doing more tests and studies based on that. So who knows? I mean, intermittent fasting may be great for, your brain health and your memory, and for people who are predisposed to getting Alzheimer's and dementia like I am, that's pretty good to know, because if there's something that I can do now to reduce the risk of catching Alzheimer's later, of course I'm going to do that. Now, here's a big question that a lot of people should be asking themselves. There's all these benefits, but is intermittent fasting really safe? Are there any negative potential side effects to it? And the answer is yes. There was an article written in 2015 called Intermittent Fasting Modulates IgA Levels in the Small Intestine Under Intense Stress, a Mouse Model. And this was published in the Journal of Neuroimmunology. So what this study is saying is that when you intermittently fast, your cells are under a mild amount of stress because you're not eating, right? So your body's a little bit stressed out. Now, if you are intermittently fasting and undergoing like serious chronic stress, this could actually be doing more harm than good. Now, IgA is an immunoglobulin which your body makes. It's an antibody that plays a crucial role in the immune function of your mucous membranes. So your mucous membranes can be anything like the membrane in your nose, in your eyes, your intestines, anywhere where there's a lot of mucus. And that is a very important part of your immune system because, that mucus helps wash away any toxins that are trying to come into your body. So IgA is made when your body is trying to protect itself against something. A high amount of IgA means a high amount of inflammation because your body's natural response when it's attacking something is inflammation. When you have a fever, there's inflammation. When you have hives, there's inflammation there. So high IgA means high inflammation. And again, we do not want long periods of inflammation because that leads to things like autoimmune disorders and other conditions and illnesses that we don't want. Now, this study found that individuals who were under acute intense stress and were also intermittently fasting had increased levels of IgA in their ileum, which is a part of your small intestine. This means that this inflammation and this extra IgA can disrupt your gut homeostasis because your intestines are part of your whole gut, your whole digestive tract. And we don't want things like intestinal ulcers or dysbiosis, which means an imbalance of gut flora. You don't want SIBO, which is gut flora coming back in your short intestines where it should not be. There's just a lot of things that you don't want to mess with. Even things like gut permeability, like if you guys heard my other episode about IBS, gut permeability, if you have too many holes or if your intestinal lining is too thin, too permeable, you can be experiencing symptoms of IBS. So those are all things that we do not want. We do not want extra inflammation in our intestines at all. Now, intermittent fasting and these high periods of stress could be causing that extra inflammation in your gut. And again, we do not want that. And now this study is saying, and I quote, "The findings in this study suggest that in humans, the positive influence of therapeutic fasting or Ramadan fasting on the immune response may be disrupted by stress." So if you are trying your best, to do intermittent fasting, you're trying to be healthy, or whether you're going through Ramadan and you are fasting for religious purposes, if you're really stressed, you're doing more harm than good. So number one thing I recommend is fix your stress first. Easier said than done, I know, but you really, really have to work on your stress management in order for anything else to really go well with your health journey. If you guys have listened to my other episodes, you will know how I feel about stress, and you will know that stress is so bad for you with so many different conditions. And not all stress, I'm talking about, like chronic, prolonged stress. That's the stress that we do not want, and we want to minimize as much as possible. Now, my thoughts on intermittent fasting, I briefly mentioned them before. I have been intermittent fasting for not very long. I'd say maybe like 3 months or so. I don't even remember why I started. I think I heard a podcast from Holistic Health News. If you guys want to learn more about things that I talk about or other health factors, benefits, I highly, highly, highly recommend listening to Holistic Health News. Gregory knows so much. He uncovers so much that most people don't know. Hell, that like I didn't even know most of these things. He's just absolutely amazing. So I highly recommend his podcast. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how I started intermittent fasting. I remember him talking about the benefits of it, and I was like, sounds good. And I think one morning I was just like too lazy to make breakfast right away. And I was hungry, and I was like, I guess this is starting my intermittent fasting journey. And it did. And at first, like I said, like I used to eat all day, pretty much. I would have my snacks all day. I used to be that person that was like, I cannot sleep unless I have a midnight snack. And I did. It wasn't necessarily at midnight, but I had my late night snack right before I went to bed. And I would wake up super hungry in the morning. And little did I know it's because how that was affecting my blood sugar and my adrenals and all that stuff. So I stopped having my snack before bed. And I started having breakfast later. When I first started intermittent fasting, I think I was only fasting for like 12 hours and I thought I was going to die. But if you think about it, you're sleeping for most of those hours anyways. So let's say you had your night snack at 8 o'clock and then you went to bed at midnight is when you fell asleep, and you woke up at 8 o'clock the next day, you got your full 8 hours. You already hit 12 hours of not eating, right? It's really not that bad. So push it another 2 hours, don't eat until 10 o'clock. Now that's been 14 hours. And that's really where I started. For the first week or two after I got over my 12-hour freak out phase, and thought I was going to die after fasting for 12 hours, like hello. But once I got over that, then I started fasting for 14 hours. And that was a real challenge for me. I was counting down the minutes like, oh my God, like, is it 14 hours yet? And I did it for a week and a half, I think. And then I started pushing it to 16 hours every day. And I felt really, really good. And then one day I honestly, unintentionally didn't eat for 18 hours. And that was tough. But you hit a certain point in this like hunger phase where you're not even hungry anymore. And it's not to say like, ooh, don't eat. And, I'm not trying to promote anorexia or anything here, but you get past that point and it's kind of freeing because you realize that a lot of it is in your head, how hungry you are, how desperate you are for that food, how much you really need it, because, your body can go like 3 days or something without eating, right? So it's not like if you don't eat right this second, you're going to die, you're going to pass out. You're probably not going to feel great, I'm not going to lie, but just getting back in tune with that need for food, not the desperate want for food, but the need to nourish your body. We need to get more in tune with that. And that's what I did with intermittent fasting. I realized that I didn't need to have my bedtime snack. I didn't need to eat as soon as I woke up. Now I'm very in tune with, it's been like 16, 17 hours. Okay, now it's time for me to eat. But what am I going to eat? I'm going to eat nourishing foods. I really don't have cravings for junk food anymore, or, like Nutella out of the jar before bed. I really don't have those cravings anymore unless I'm on my period, which is a whole nother topic. But yeah, I really, really recommend intermittent fasting for most people. There are some people that intermittent fasting can kind of be detrimental, and that's more for people who have like specific cancers, because then you get ketones involved and it can be kind of dangerous for certain conditions that you may be dealing with. So always talk to someone who's qualified, even a nutritionist like me. I mean, depending on who you are seeing, who you trust, whether they know what they're talking about or not, if they're trained in that field, they may know if you can intermittent fast safely. And that's a really important thing to talk about, because everybody's body is different. Everybody has different things that they're dealing with. Everybody has different stress levels, different conditions, So intermittent fasting is not for everybody. So talk to someone who's qualified, even myself, if you are interested, and we can see if that is something that's safe and feasible for you to do as well. But aside from all that, if you are healthy, if you are able to intermittently fast, I highly recommend giving it a shot, trying it out. I don't think I'll ever go back to not intermittently fasting. Like, I like fasting for my 14 to 16 hours a day, usually 16. If I'm really, really hungry, I'm not going to deprive myself. I will break my fast and I will eat. And that, again, depends on my workload, what I'm doing for that day. If I'm going to be physically active first thing in the morning, I'm probably going to eat something. But if it's just a regular day-to-day thing, then no, I'll fast for 16, 17 hours, no problem, and I'll feel great doing it. But anyways, that is enough of me rambling. I'm sure you guys have had enough of my science and me running off topic. But yeah, until the next time, this has been your host, Alicia Rosati of Rosati Nutrition, and I can't wait to talk to you in the next episode.